Good morning, year six. What we're going to do within our reading session today is continue with the chapter three elements of private peaceful. And today we're specifically looking at the skill of retrieving information from part of that chapter. Okay, now to be successful in this session, what we need to be able to do is identify what we're being asked for. So we need to read that question carefully. We need to locate the key words in the question. So we need to make sure within the question that we're focused on what we're being asked and how we know we're being asked that. Now we'll answer it. We need to scan the text. So sometimes there might be a flag word. We talked about those trigger words, which make us look a little bit more in detail at a particular passage of the text. And finally, we need to support our answer, sometimes exactly with a quotation or sometimes just numbers or dates or names from the text. Okay, so there's four elements to being successful in retrieving information and answering that type of question. Okay, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to carry on reading together from the end of page 37. I'll read through with you, and then at the end of each page, I'll explain what I'm expecting you to do for the vocabulary elements for that section. At the end of page 37, then, it was a harvest mouse, the sweetest little mouse I ever saw, with oversized ears and bewildered eyes. She stroked him with the back of her finger, and he sat up for her in the box and twitched his whiskers at us. She gave him to Big Joe after tea, down in the orchard, out of sight of the cottage, well hidden from Grandma Wolf's ever-watchful gaze. This idea of the gaze of Grandma Wolf being ever-watchful shows me that she's always looking. She shows me that she's always cynical and always involving herself in their life and always judging with her eyes and her ever-watchful gaze. She never gives them a moment of peace. Big Joe hugged Molly as if he'd never let her go. He kept the birthday mouse in his own box and hid him away in a drawer in his bedroom cupboard. He said it would be too cold for him outside in the woodshed with all his other creatures. The mouse became his instant favourite. All of us tried to make Big Joe understand that he mustn't ever tell Grandma Wolf that if she ever knew, he'd take his mouse away and kill it. There's an end to the sentence, an end to the paragraph. As a predictive reader, I'm already thinking, oh, I'm thinking what's coming next. I don't know how she found out, but when we came home from school a few days later, Big Joe was sitting on the floor of his room, sobbing his heart out, his empty drawer beside him. Grandma Wolf came storming in, saying she wasn't going to have any nasty, dirty animals in her house. Worse still, so that he'd never bring any other animals into the house. She got rid of them all. The slow worm, the two lizards, the hedgehog. Big Joe's family of animals were gone, and he was heartbroken. Molly screamed at her that she was a cruel, cruel woman and that she'd go to hell when she was dead, and then ran off home in tears. The fact that Molly's running off home in tears shows me two or three things about Molly. It shows me that she's upset about getting that emotional. She's upset about how Joe has been treated, but maybe also she might be worried about the consequences for her of losing her temper with Grandma Wolf. Looking at page 38 then, this in today's session, I'm giving you the word, and I'd like you with that word to identify what the quotation is where bewildered appears, what word class it is, whether it's a noun, a verb, an adverb, or an adjective, and circle the relevant word class. And then I'd also like you to identify, as well as the other elements of definition, usage, synonyms, and antonyms, I'd like you to identify the number of syllables within bewildered. That night, Charlie and I made up a story about how we'd put rat poison in Grandma Wolf's tea the next day and kill her. We did get rid of her in the end too, but thankfully without the use of rat poison. Instead, a miracle happened, a wonderful miracle. I want to read about the wonderful miracle in a second. However, the fact that Charlie and his brother are still thinking about affecting negatively Grandma Wolf, they hurt her, shows me that anger towards her is still there. Also, the idea that it's thankful they didn't have to use rat poison. I'm interested to know what you think. Do you believe that that's because they didn't want to kill her because they knew it was bad to kill? Or do you think it might be they were worried about the consequences that they would have got in trouble? First, the Colonel's wife died in a wheelchair, so we didn't have to push her in the lake after all. She choked on a scone at tea time, and despite everything Mother did to try and save her, she just stopped breathing. There was a big funeral which we all had to go to. Is quite interesting. It shows that they weren't particularly fond or caring towards the Colonel's wife. They had to go there. It meant it was an obligation. She had a shiny coffin with silver handles, piled high with flowers. The vicar said how loved she was in the parish and how she devoted her life to caring for everyone on the estate, all of which was news to us. I really like that sentence. It shows that falseness, that especially sometimes at funerals, people talk kindly of people. And it's right, we should speak kindly of people, especially if they've died. But here, this idea that she cared about people, this family didn't know that. They didn't believe that. Afterwards, they opened at the church floor and lowered her into the family vault while we sang Abide with Me. And I was thinking that I'd rather be in Father's simple coffin and buried outside where the sun shines and the wind blows, not down in some gloomy hole with the crowd of dead relatives. Mother had to take Big Joe out in the middle of the hymn because he started singing oranges and lemons again very loudly and would not stop. Again, showing that Joe doesn't know how to react to certain circumstances. Grandma Wolf bared her teeth at us as wolves do, and furrowed her brow in disapproval. We didn't know it then, but very soon she would disappear almost totally from our lives, taking all her anger, all her threats and disapproval with her. That three-pronged things that she does. Her anger, threats, and disapproval. That sentence of three, that's really powerful as a writing tool. So suddenly, joy of joys, Mother was back home with us again, and we hoped it was only a question of time before Grandma Wolf moved back up to the village. Here on this page, I'd like you to look at furrowed. If we see where Grandma Wolf bared her teeth with her furrowed brow, if she's baring her teeth because she's unhappy, what do we think happens to the brow of her head? If it's furrowed, is that a sign that she's calm, or is it a sign that she's unhappy? Towards Joe is singing. There was no job for Mother anymore at the big house, no lady to be made to. She was home, and day by day she was becoming her old self again. There were wonderful, blazing arguments between her and Grandma Wolf, mostly about how Grandma Wolf treated Big Joe. And I like this idea of we're seeing the family come together again. They won't let Grandma Wolf bully them, they won't let her treat Joe especially poorly. Mother said that now she was home, she wouldn't stand for any of it anymore. We listened to every word and loved every moment of it. And they see she's a heroine to them. They love her, they idolize her. But there was one big shadow hanging over all this new joy. We could see that with Mother out of work and no money coming in, things were becoming desperate. There was no money in the mug on the mantelpiece, and every day there was less food on the table. For a while, we had little to eat but potatoes, and we all knew perfectly well that sooner or later the Colonel would put us out of the cottage. We were just waiting for the knock on the door. Meanwhile, we were becoming very hungry. It was Charlie's idea to go poaching salmon, sea trout, rabbits, even deer if we were lucky, he said. Poaching is when you go to a place and you take food, you take mainly animals, you take it without being given permission. You steal it basically from a big landowner normally. Molly and I would be on lookout. Sometimes we use poaching about animals which we're not hunting for food, but people hunt for horns, such as elephants and other animals with ivory tusks. When we poach them, we go against the law to steal something, to take an animal. Molly and I would be on lookout. He could do the trapping or the fishing. So at dusk or dawn, whenever we could get away together, we went off poaching on the Colonel's land, in the Colonel's forests or in the Colonel's rivers where there were plenty of sea trout and plenty of salmon. We couldn't take Big Joe because he would start singing at any time and give us away. Besides, he told Mother everything. Okay, here we've got the mantelpiece. Got to identify that word. I'm intrigued now to see what happens when they go poaching. I think they need to. They're desperate for food because of a specific reason. They've lost something, but I want to know what happens. I'm worried that they might get caught, but I'm glad they're not taking Joe because he would encourage them to be caught. Good job then, those vocabulary elements that you're going to complete. Now we're going to look at our retrieval type of question. According to the text, how did Big Joe embrace Molly? That's the question. Okay. If we want a 1 mark answer, so 1 out of 2, we could say Big Joe hugged Molly on page 38 as if he'd never let her go. I should say her rather than he. If we want it to be a better answer, though, we can say that this showed how happy Joe was to receive the mouse that she had given to him. So we give that extra detail in our answer. Hey guys, you've got 4 questions. These are on your next sheet. I'm going to move up out of the way. 1 and 4 are very similar to the example question, so you can understand the type of answer that you're going to give to 1 and 4 if you look back to the previous page where you've got your point and your justification with some reference to the text. Number 2 is quite similar to a summarizing question where we put things in order. So you'll look carefully at the elements of chapter 3 that we've read so far. And then number 4, you should be able to identify the hymn maybe by something about how it is written. Okay? And also the context. I look forward to seeing your answers. I hope you're enjoying Private Peaceful. Your answers can be on this sheet, please. See you soon. Bye-bye, year 3. Year 6, sorry, year 6.